all, and welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of the Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. Welcome our acting CEO, Mike Brady, and our brand new General Manager of Planning, Ed Johnson, ably assisted by Chris. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you who are in the room with us today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council's social media channels. As we know, this week is NAIDOC week, so it's a special acknowledgement to country. I acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today. The Western Waka Waka, Guyabal and Jarrawa peoples, and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's First Peoples. The attendance's apologies, leave of absence, declarations of conflict of interest. There is an apology from Councillor Rebecca von Hoff, but a resolution is required that the apology for the non-attendance from Councillor Rebecca von Hoff be accepted. Councillor to move that. Mayor and Councillor, seconded by Councillor James. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. I note the leave of absence of Councillor Edwina Farquhar and no resolution is required in that regard. Likewise, I note the leave of absence of Councillor Melissa Taylor and no resolution is required there. There have been no declarations of prescribed conflicts of interests or declarations of declarable conflicts of interests. That being the case, we'll proceed to the Regional Development Statistics Report. The author is our General Manager, Mr. Johnson, Ed Johnson. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Chair. I will take the report as read. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome, Ed. I think it's your first committee meeting. Just going to 5.2, we seem to have a huge drop in building approvals by the value of 000 compared to a graph that's compared to May 25, compared to all the other months of preceding 2 years, it's gone down quite a lot. Is there any reasons or thoughts or?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair, they are very, very seasonal things, building approvals, although I do note that there is a, particularly as you've pointed out, compared to May in the previous year, it is fairly stark, the difference. As to the reasons of that, there's nothing that's become apparent, certainly to me, in the past week or so, that would lead to that, albeit it is a response to the appetite of the private market, whether to proceed or not, perhaps more relevantly in this case, to a BA stage that would show up through this process. We can have a look at whether that continues, particularly in the month to come, and I guess respond or seek to understand further as these statistics develop in light of that dip.
Thanks, Ed. That would be good if you could, because if that trend continues, I don't know where it's going to end up. I know we're in a housing crisis, but I always say that we've got a construction crisis coming, more so than anything.
Any further questions? Councillor Tim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Morning, Ed, Chris, your team. I think that one's by value, right? So you could have one really expensive one or a lot of... It's a monetary one. My questions were around back on page 5, the part 2 of the report, we're talking about the how many new dwellings compared to the SEQ, shaping SEQ targets. So it's in the graph just slightly below that one there. My question was, we're not hitting our targets bar 1 month. Do you see this report changing if our SEQ targets change? Is that likely to happen? Because I know a lot of it's around where we want to be in our targets. But yeah, is that concern that we're I suppose consistently below our targets, noting it's a 10 or 12-year job?
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair. It is a long-term target, albeit it is good to hit a target month to month on delivery. It is one where council reports effectively on market activity with very little sort of control, so to speak, over whether lots are brought to market or not, albeit as those targets perhaps shift or otherwise, it is very important to understand, well, what levers might council have in response relevant to our role in this housing, the housing challenges broadly and across the state. What I will say is I'm very well aware that other regional councils across Queensland and certainly others within the SEQ metro area continue to struggle to meet that red line target that you see there. It is something that is continually discussed among my peers across the industry, both within council and within the private sector, around, well, what responses might exist, what responses might councils be able to make. I know we've got what are fairly favourable incentive policies to try and lead with the carrot. There are no sticks, unfortunately, through the process to force that product to market. It is an economic response, and hopefully, as interest rate decisions are made at a Reserve Bank level, which are due, I believe, today, we may see shifts in that as well. It is a very complex housing market that we exist within.
Yeah, thanks for the answer, Ed, and the broader statewide commentary. I appreciate that. If I may have a follow-up, Chair, just on the next page, we talk about planning applications, both code and impact, and that's MCU and compliance and configure. I was under the impression that impact came before us, and noting there's, we've had 1 or 2 meetings this year and there's, 6 or 8 per month. So is that something, and noting you've day 5, well done, Ed, is this something we might have a conversation about, the trigger to bring stuff to us, or is impact being decided, in your opinion, by office staff where it should be?
Through the chair, it's perhaps one we might explore further as a group in terms of the utilisation of the delegation that exists. My understanding is a delegation has been provided to allow for the decisions to be decided under delegation.
Or even on
so
impact.
to speak. Correct, yeah.
Right.
Now, how that's done, in what circumstances, I think that's part of what I'm endeavouring to very quickly understand.
No, thanks for the answer. I appreciate that.
Councillor Gary.
And am I reading this right, that there's only 2 units that had certificates this month, in May, and none in April, 2 in March? Is that? Am I reading it wrong on page 5? Final certificate for units. There's only been 2 approved and 0 for 2 months in a row.
I think that's 2 BAs through the chair, so it could be multiple units within them, but certainly how many units exist within those 2 BAs issued within May. Yeah. I don't have that detail to hand, but I'm happy to come back to you.
I just see there's none in March, none in April.
Correct, yeah.
That'd be compounding the house shortage, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, and the consolidation and expansion targets that exist within that red line, that is a core part of that discussion.
Yeah. And there was an article in the paper just recently for everyone's that units in Brisbane now are 35,000 a square metre. New construction. If you go back 10 years, they were 10. So it's probably why they slow down.
Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Chair. This may be a question on notice. There's a complex that was built out on Drayton Road, the old Hameworth site. There's about 20, 30 units there. It's been locked up for quite a while. Is there any reason why that hasn't gone through, or what's the hold up there? Because they've finished, they're waiting for occupation. I don't know whether you've got an answer today, but if you could supply us with an answer, or Chris might have a...
Thank you,
great.
Councillor. Through the chair, I can provide some commentary on that. There is a development approval for reconfiguring a lot and a material change of use at that site. And the material change of use was for multiple dwellings with internal roads for waste servicing, internal waste servicing. In the assessment of the application, or the most recent change application, there was an RPEQ certified manoeuvring diagram purporting to demonstrate that a council contracted waste service vehicle could traverse the site. That has proved to be questionable when a truck has been brought out to the site. So it is, at this stage, there is a question around how waste will be serviced on that site. It's unresolved. Council's waste team, I understand, is looking into that.
Thank you. Do you think it will be solved, or a solution found, or...?
Thank you, Councillor. There will be a solution. It's not clear what the solution is at this stage.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If there are no further questions, I'll put the motion that the report of the General Manager Planning and Development Services on the regional development statistics for May 2025 be noted by Council. Could somebody move that? Councillor Tim, Councillor Trevor, seconded. All those in favour? Carried. I overlooked asking you to click to join the meeting. Now I'll ask you to click to end the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Water and Waste Committee for the month of July. Given that Councillor Rebecca was the advertised chair of this meeting, I'd now like to call for a nomination to chair this meeting as the first. Councillor Kerry.
Nominate Councillor Bill.
Councillor Bill. Okay, moved by Councillor Kerry, seconded by Councillor Tim. Those in favour? Motion's carried. Thanks, Bill.
Well, morning all. Welcome to the Water and Waste Committee, 8th July. Could I pay my respects to the custodians on the land on which we meet this morning, the Western Waka Waka, the Jarrawa and Guyable people and the Biggambill people. If I could take a small moment to just reflect on how our First Nation forefathers were very much connected to their land and the environment around them. And those principles of connection, when we ponder on that, we actually don't fall outside of those parameters either, because when you think about it, we actually, number one, depend on each other as a boardroom and an executive and a council team to actually achieve results, because we're not any of those stated entities without each other. So we're ultimately connected. And as far as I know, we can't survive with the natural environment around us. The trees give us oxygen and all of those sorts of things. So we're integrally connected. And it's that component of reflection that can cause us, when we take enough time to think about that, can cause us to think about how we arrive at decisions collectively and constructively and for the good of all. So, yeah, I just beg your indulgence to take a moment to think about that as we pay respects to those elders past and present and those emerging, and particularly over the NAIDOC week this week. So, and with that, I'd like to also acknowledge and welcome the the acting CEO, Mike Brady, General Manager, Jake Passio, Mayor, councillors and staff, and gallery. Thank you for your ever presence, and those online. So we have some apologies. Firstly, Councillor Rebecca Von Hoff, and there's a resolution required. Could I have a mover and a seconder for Councillor Gary, Councillor James, that Councillor Rebecca's apology be accepted? Those in favour? That's carried, unanimous. We also note the leave of absence for Councillor Edwina and Councillor Melissa. There's no prescribed declarations of interest or declarables, to my knowledge. There's, if there is, let us know. So without further ado, could we move to item 3 of the report? And Jake, I'll hand over to you, or Toby. It's the Southern Towns Water Supply Study.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to, and good morning, councillors. Just like to welcome Toby Milliken as the author of this report, but he's ably assisted by Prayag, who's the engineer, network planning, who did the engineering behind this report. So thank you, Toby.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. So this report is to present the findings of and the recommendations of the Southern Towns Water Supply Study Planning Report, which was completed this year for Council's consideration. So the scope of the investigation was to prepare a calibrated water supply network model for the study area, which includes Cambodia, Greenmount, Nobby and Clifton. Assess the ability of the networks to cope with the future growth for the planning horizons incorporated in the local government infrastructure plan, and develop augmentation strategies to resolve any deficiencies. These towns were previously investigated as separate studies over 2012 and 2013. The main changes that we've seen since the previous studies were done is the Great Artesian Basin bore and the reverse osmosis plant being commissioned in Clifton in 2021. And we've also seen some changes in the growth projections for each of the 4 towns. In addition to this, the Toowoomba to Warwick pipeline project will result in a new water treatment plant being built at Greenmount, with treated water pipelines to then supply Greenmount, Cambodia, Nobby and Clifton. This change to the supply strategy has been included in the model from the 2026 planning horizon onwards. The studies assessed the water networks against council service standards and proposed augmentations to resolve the network any network issues. The identified works over the next 10 years total $4.2 million and include a new water tower in Nobby and booster pump station and water main upgrades in Clifton. Future augmentations include additional water storages at Greenmount in 2046 at an estimated cost of $1.3 million and additional water storage at Cambodia by 2051 at an estimated cost of $2.5 million. In Clifton, the ultimate growth projections require additional future water main augmentations totalling $1 million. These augmentations are not expected to be required until after 2051. So the recommendation in this report is that Council endorse the Southern Towns Water Supply Study Planning Report 2025, and that the report be used in the formulation of future capital works programs and also to inform the local government infrastructure plan. I'll take the rest of the report as read, so happy to take any questions.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Toby, thank you for the report. I think it's really interesting. Thank you, very good. But I'm just a question, I suppose. I feel that we've undercooked what might happen in Greenmount. It is the oldest town in our TRC region, and the whole thing that's held it back probably since the late 90s, early 2000s, is a lack of a decent water supply there. Cambodia, a little bit, it has a lot of flooded areas, so I think it's limited in where it can go. But Greenmount, I believe, is going to probably, well, I won't say explode, but I think it'll be fairly well taken up in the next 10 years once the water supply gets there. I suppose my question really is, these are just predicted figures, and I suppose that we would be able to be nimble enough to react should there be something there that we haven't predicted. Is that the case? Thank you.
Through the chair, thanks for your question, councillor. So we have allowed for, I suppose, there's a reasonable amount of growth that's been allowed for through the current growth model. I suppose one of the things that we do is we do monitor the growth in each of the towns through our prioritisation model, and that triggers when we go and review these studies. So we've assessed it up to, I think, about 3 times the current population in Greenmount, which is quite a bit. As we monitor that demand, it enables us to look at whether we need to bring forward any of those augmentations that have been proposed right through to that ultimate planning horizon, and the capital works program can be adjusted to suit.
And thank you, Toby. But I think 3 times is probably a little bit modest, and I guess it depends on what we're going to have as available land in the next town plan, what the zoning will be. And I take your point, that's all we can do at this point, but I know when I was mayor out there was an application for, I think it was about 230 blocks, and it had to be refused because there was no water. So at the end of the day, it's not flooded, it's good country, and it's on a ridge, which makes it great for amenity and a nice place to live. So I guess the main reason for my question, I suppose, I believe it's undercooked. That's my thought. But at the end of the day, we can only go on what we have. And my question is, and you've answered it, we can be nimble enough to change. The supply will be there, the pipeline will be there, the actual treatment plant will be there, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kerry.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Toby, for your report. Just looking at the table in the executive summary, the assumed future scenarios of each of the towns seems to be roughly increasing at a similar rate, other than Clifton, which between 2051 and ultimate is a lot higher in proportion to the others. I think you touched on that in your summary. Could you expand on the reason why it is out of proportion, if you accept that it is, and why the other centres aren't likewise out of showing a similar increase from 2051 ultimate? I don't know what ultimate quite means, really. Is that 10 years, 20 years, whatever? Anyway.
Yes, thanks for your question, councillor. So I suppose there's a few things to this. So firstly, yes, there's about a doubling in population in Clifton between 2051 and ultimate. Nobby and Greenmount have similar increases. They're roughly about that doubling. Cambodia is a little bit less, with about a 60% increase in population. The numbers in this report come from the growth model, the current growth model that council's adopted. I think a reasonable assumption from that growth model is that land closer to Toowoomba is more likely to grow first. So Cambodia has a, I suppose, earlier increase in demand. There's also less land in the current planning scheme available for future growth. So I suppose that's why Cambodia tapers off a little bit compared to the other towns, whereas the other towns have, I suppose, a substantial amount of land that is zoned for development that I suppose exceeds the growth rates that have been adopted. So in terms of the timing of ultimate, I suppose don't have an answer for that either. What is ultimate? But I suppose it's closely linked to full development of the zoned land.
So, Jake or Toby, do we have a note in the report? It talked about informing the local government infrastructure plan, the review period for that. I mean, because, you know, it's a pity Ed stepped out. I was going to ask him, but both the review of the town planning scheme, which we're undertaking right this very moment, and the infrastructure plan inform your planning. So it's very much dependent on those mechanisms. So when's our next review of the LGIP?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. Essentially, and it is a shame that my colleague had to step out of the room, but as part of the planning scheme review that is being undertaken, the local government infrastructure plan will be aligned to the planning scheme. So some of the work that this team has already done it's a bit of a cyclic conversation, as in our team prepares based on an indication from the planning team how much infrastructure is required to service a community of this size at this location. We then input that into the LGIP. The LGIP is then looked at based on the amount that can be recovered from developers through developer charges, and then council's ability to then fund that infrastructure, and that then informs the size of the LGIP. So we work, I don't like to use the term, but essentially hand in glove with our colleagues from the planning scheme around growth figures, around sizes and amounts of developable land to ensure that infrastructure is delivered just before development so that development can proceed, but we are not investing in infrastructure, or the community is not rather investing in infrastructure that's not required ahead of time. So it is a balance, but it is a cyclic process, and it is intended for the next major update for the LGIP to come with the revised planning scheme.
You're right, Councillor Carey. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's you're right, Jake, the balancing act. I mean, that's why we should be paying very careful attention to those mechanisms and the affordability for the whole of the region, and where those priority growth areas are, where major infrastructure outside of our own, i.e. state and Commonwealth government investment in major infrastructure, may actually have some bearing on where those settlement patterns end up as well, and the extent of those. So there's all those variables that we've got to think about. So, yeah.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, but as Toby said earlier, these are not documents that sit idle for years. We very closely review population growth as we see growth come on, ensuring that it aligns with our growth model, and if there is a misalignment, then that will trigger a revised planning report to ensure that investment in infrastructure, as I said earlier, is most cost effective and just in time to support development. So we're not, water infrastructure is expensive infrastructure, and ensuring that we invest at appropriate times ensures that affordability is one of the key drivers for affordability for water and waste services in our community.
Any further questions, Councillor Jeff?
Thanks very much, Chair. Through you, thanks very much for the report, gentlemen. Just in regard to the the planning horizons, the existing 4.2 million, which will go through the usual budget prioritisation, where did it sit in regard to the budget that we've handed down a couple of weeks ago? How close is it to being assessed as more urgent than other projects?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through the chair. Essentially, these works, it's about timing. So, as council is aware, the capital program development starts quite almost as soon as the budget is handed down. We start looking at developing the program for the next few years. So, the amount of money that's indicated or the projects that are indicated in this planning report are not included in next year's capital works program, but are able to be included through the reprioritisation for the 26-27 capital program. So the next year's capital program, I'll just get my financial years correct. And so while there are deficiencies in our existing service levels, those are somewhat uniform across our entire network. So as we have done in every planning report, we do tend to identify situations where some parts of our community aren't quite meeting our minimum service levels, and we prioritise those on a greatest need, bang for buck, essentially approach, trying to manage both renewals as well as improvements to service levels with the funding that's available within the program to deliver a sustainable capital program for the not just water and waste, but across all of those asset classes that council has to work with. So it is there, Mr Mayor. I can't give you an indication of exactly where it sits in the hundreds of projects that we have that we prioritise, but I can assure you that it is done on a bang for buck basis. So we first identify renewal programs, we then look to ensure that those renewals, if they can be upsized as part of that, are done so, and then assess on a basis of the greatest benefit to the community for the lowest reasonable expense.
Just to follow up if I could. Thanks very much, Jake. Appreciate that. Noting that these few look like to be upgrades rather than renewals. So therefore, I guess where I'm coming from is, and you've mentioned we've got multiple fronts across our region. We also have a major project that we're delivering. These sorts of things would be delivered if it weren't for that major project. So I'm trying to massage my mind as to the enormity of the projects that we've needed to defer until we get another one underway, or at least substantively funded from external areas, including state and federal.
Through the chair, Mr Mayor, you're absolutely correct. Whilst we are dealing with a considerably large project in the Crestbrook Dam Safety Improvement Project, there are not just big projects that have to be delayed and deferred. There are many smaller projects that have fallen off or fallen below the line, essentially, and these are just examples of those, but there are many examples like these that are across all of our water and wastewater networks, and in fact across all of our infrastructure networks. The Crestbrook project has had a wide-ranging impact, and absolutely funding from the state or federal government would assist us in ensuring that projects such as these that are identified could also be delivered.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Trev.
Thanks, Chair. The bores that are currently in use on the southern side, with this new water pipeline going in, what will the purpose be of those bores? Are they just going to sit there idly, or as a backup, or just please explain?
So there's been a significant investment in the reverse osmosis plant at Clifton already. It is intended that for good water security practices that these will form part of an augmented supply. So they won't just be left. There are some bores that are that have below optimal production rates, so that are under stress or considerably under stress. We will look to manage those as we do with other bores. They may be de-equipped and reused in emergency situations, or say if we find ourselves in considerable drought again. But certainly those significant investments made with the reverse osmosis facility will form a supplement the supply that comes from the Toowoomba to Warwick pipeline, with the connection at Green Mountain, subsequent treated water mains to those communities.
Thanks, Jake.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, could I have a mover and a seconder that the council endorse the Southern Towns Water Supply Planning Report 2025, and that the report be used in the information in the formulation of the future capital works programs and informing the local government infrastructure plan? A mover and a seconder. Councillor Gary, Councillor Jeff. Those in favour? That's carried. Item 4, over to you again, Toby, and that's the Yarraman Sewage Catchment Planning Study.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yes, this report is to present the findings and recommendations of the Yarraman Sewage Catchment Study Planning Report undertaken this year for Council's consideration. The scope of this investigation was to prepare a validated sewerage model for the Yarraman network, assess the ability of the network to cope with future growth for the planning horizons incorporated in the local government infrastructure plan, and to develop augmentation strategies to resolve any deficiencies. The study concluded that the existing gravity network can meet demand requirements until the ultimate planning horizon. A sewage pump station upgrade is needed for the ultimate planning horizon and is estimated to cost $155,000. Since augmentations are not expected until after 2051, there is no capital expenditure required in the 10-year capital works program or the 15-year LGIP. So the recommendation of the study is that Council endorse the Yarraman Sewage Catchment Study Planning Report 2025 and that the report be used in the formulation of future capital works programs and to inform the local government infrastructure plan. Take the rest of the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Any questions, councillors? If not, Councillor, happy to move. Councillor James moves. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carroll. As I won't read that again, Toby's just read it out, but here again is another essential piece of planning for critical infrastructure. We are really in trouble if this doesn't work, this sort of infrastructure. So that's why we plan the way we do, and all those bits, as Jake said, come together across the planning arena that inform this network amongst other networks as well. So take a vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That concludes our meeting for July the 8th at 9:39. Thank you very much, Jake, team. Well, this will be a very short committee meeting, councillors. Firstly, can I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge First Nations people, the Western Waka Waka, Jarowa and Guyabal and Migamble people. There are no items, but I need to do a bit of housekeeping here. Firstly, thank you, councillors, Mayor, General Manager and Acting CEO. Wearing two hats for this one, Mike. Need to do the apologies and noting leave of absence. Councillor Rebecca Von Hoff is an apology, so I require a mover and a seconder. Councillor James, seconder. Councillor Gary. Those in favour? That's carried. We also note Councillor Edwina and Councillor Melissa both have leave of absence and no resolutions required. And as there is no items on the agenda for today, I would conclude the meeting at 9:41 on the 8th. Thank you very much, councillors. On to the next one, environment and community.
Morning, colleagues. Can I welcome you all to the Environment and Community Committee meeting for this month, acknowledging the traditional owners on the land we meet, elders past, present and emerging. Acting CEO, thank you for your presence. We've got the whole team from Environment and Community, so thank you all for being here, including General Manager Nick Hauser. Colleagues, in item 2, oh, by the way, please join the meeting because you've got to leave and join a few times this morning, so it does mark the attendance electronically. I do need a motion, a resolution for the absence of Councillor Rebecca Von Hoff today, moved by Councillor Shine. Can I have a second to Councillor Gardner, please? All those in favour? It's passed without dissent. I do note we have a leave of absence has been passed for Councillors Ed Weiner and Councillor Melissa Taylor. There are no declared or prescribed conflict of interest that I have been advised of, colleagues, noting there is one item on today's agenda. Are there any items for the review of the Australia Day working groups? None have been forthcoming, so I'll take it there are no conflicts of interest required. Moving then to item 3. The review of terms of reference, Australia Day Coordinating Working Group and Australia Day Local Working Groups. I will hand over to Nick. To Nick. I'll hand over to Paul. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Councillors, this report seeks to amend the current terms of reference relevant to both the Australia Day Coordinating Working Group and the Australia Day Local Working Groups. You may recall a councillor information session held back on the 18th of September last year, which covered up on this topic. The proposed changes to the terms of reference seek to address ambiguities and gaps identified in the previous terms of reference. The proposed changes are designed to provide clear objectives, timelines, functions, expectations, as well as manage risk both for the coordinating group and local working groups. The coordinated working group supports local working groups in organising and approving the scope of Australia Day events and award winners, while the local working group provide community input, recommendations and help deliver award ceremonies and event activations. Councillors, there's one overarching coordinating working group chaired by Councillor James O'Shea and 9 Australia Day local working groups throughout the region. By endorsing these updates, we aim to ensure effective planning and execution of Australia Day events, fostering community engagement and celebrating our unique way of life. Your approval of the redeveloped terms of reference will also initiate a fresh nomination process for local working group members, ensuring alignment and acceptance of the new guidelines. All members of the local working groups have been informed that the review of the terms of reference are being undertaken, and where modifications occur, new engagements will be required. Councillors, track changed versions of the redeveloped terms of reference are available at attachments 2 and 4. It's expected that the new membership engagement will occur in sufficient time to allow the effective planning execution of Australia Day activations for 2026. With that, happy to take the report as read and any questions you may have.
Thanks very much, colleagues. Noting there are the coordinating working group terms of reference and the local working group terms of reference. Are there any questions on that? Councillor Shine?
Yeah, no, thanks. Just notice that there's no provision for Australia Day funding or organisation at, for example, Yarraman and Millmerran. What's the explanation for that? said Millmerran, but Millmerran is mentioned, but
It is, but
think
it's only a
Yarraman
smaller
might
amount,
be
councillor, you're right. The Millmerran Community Support Service undertake most of the Australia Day planning, and therefore it's under different funding that is not costed to TRC. So that's why their amount is smaller. And Yarraman don't have an Australia Day event themselves, although they generally do take part in the Rosalie Shire, which took place at Hayden this year, which is north.
Does that vary from time to time? Is it the location of the Rosalie one?
The working group made a decision this year, yes, that it was generally held at Goombungee, or has been for probably the last 6 years.
Yep.
And the working group this year made a decision to make it a roving event. So they've started with Hayden, and there is some plan to take it perhaps out near McLagan next year.
That'd be good. The just if I might, the looking at the table there, Highfields and Cambodia, which quite distance separated, but they're in the emerging zone. Is there a do you have an idea of the division of the staff and staffing costs and the total between those two?
There was a higher amount of attendance, is that what you mean, at the Highfields event than there was at Cambodia? So you can see that there was a total of 250 people who attended the two. The attendance at Cambodia would have been approximately 100, and I think Councillor Carol Taylor might be able to confirm. And Highfields would make up the remainder.
Thanks, Councillor Shine, for the question. Thank you, Kylie, for your expertise. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I would have to state that there was at least 150 at Cambodia, perhaps more, and it is for the whole Cambodia district, which encompasses, like most of them do, the old Shire area. So there's 6 major towns virtually in that area. I do have some questions, if I might, on the local group here. On page 4 of 9, I'm a little concerned about the clause that says where you wish to undertake activities outside of approved schedule of activations as approved by the coordinating working group, such engagement should be at the sole cost, responsibility and risk of the individuals jointly and severally who organise and conduct such activations. Now, these local Australia Day committees were put up there to service those districts. The actual celebrations for each area were quite uniquely different, and they come from the community itself, and it is an actual celebration of their local heroes as they see it. And whilst I am on board with us saying that there shouldn't be anything of high risk, I really don't agree, and I'm sure the community doesn't agree, that every one of them has to be rubber stamped and be exactly the same. I think that if we're going to do that, we really are tying those local committees' hands behind their back in what that community might work for that community, as is absolutely nothing the same at another community, and I have been involved since 2000. So the other thing I have a concern about is the very next local working group membership, a minimum of 4 members. In our area, when we were a shire, we tried to have people on our group from all areas of that community, and it has gone through a period in the past where the actual area has been just from one area that has actually virtually controlled what happens there without inviting or seeking members from other areas. And I think we need to be really careful about this. It needs to be extremely wide in its membership. Indeed, perhaps we need to target some members from different areas. We put something online and we expect people to go online, but the people we need, the people that represent different localities in all of these areas, I suspect, are the ones that we need to have on this local committee, and all areas in that area need to be represented. I think a minimum of 4 is nowhere near enough. I think there should at least be 6, maybe 7. I think that it has, with 4 members, it has the possibility of becoming the province of one group in that area. And I don't think that that's what any of us want, and it certainly doesn't serve our community well. They're my 2 concerns. Number one, that's spelt out there that we have become, that's extremely bureaucratic. I understand a rubber stamp would be great, costs less money, less issues, and being able to be judged the same way. But I'd fight in a ditch for these local committees, for these local celebrations of their own local heroes, and it does not behove us be telling them how they should celebrate that day. And that's one. And number 2, 4 members, I believe that's way too few. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Carroll. So there are 2 questions there, very valid questions. The first one regarding that clause in there about undertaking activities outside of the approved schedule. Could I have an answer for that, Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Councillors, the way these draft terms of reference work, so the recommendations would come up from local working groups to the overarching coordinating group for endorsement and review around risk profile. So it can still very much be around local activation and the recommendations coming from that local working group through to the coordinating group for consideration, endorsement, and then progression from there. So it's very much an overarching view around the risk profile of activities. There's no intent to try and roll out a cookie cutter type approach in relation to local activations.
Thank you, Paul. And then I guess who's on it makes all the difference to what's requested. So the next question is, are we trying to get people from areas, all areas, or are we just going with who's there and who wants to, because we all know that is not often not representative.
So the 4 number minimum, I think, was the question Councillor Carroll was asking, Paul. Do you have any comment on that?
No, I don't particularly. The way the draft terms of reference are at present is a minimum 4, maximum of 10. So the threshold of 10 being around having a sufficient number of people that provide diversity of view, etc. The 4 could be 6. It could be whatever council wishes it to be. So no, there's no specifics as to why 4 was selected.
As a follow-up, thank you. I'd prefer it was 6, and I have my reasons. I've seen it. I've seen it happen in not just one area, that it is not, it ends up with the best of intention and not being representative of that entire community. Where it's held in each area, we've just heard that going to Maclagan is great. I mean, the reason it stays at Cambodia is they've got the covered area, they've got the big trees, it's very hot that time of year, it saves money, and everybody's happy to be there. That doesn't mean that Cambodia should be represented, or Felton or somewhere, Wairima or somewhere else should be more represented than somewhere like Budgie or Ramsey or somewhere like that.
Carroll, I'm happy for you to have an amendment to the motion if that's the way you'd like to go.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you why I don't think it's enough, because I've seen it happen. I'm happy to move an amendment, or it's not an amendment, it's actually a new motion, but I would like to see that changed to minimum of 6 members. Maximum of 10 I'm happy with, but a minimum of 6. Thank you.
No, so Councillor Carroll, I will put that in due process. I do have a few questions before we do that. So I had Councillor Bill, then Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Nick or Paul or whoever. Was the intent behind the 4 to try and cater for, and we all know there's lean times around volunteerism? Because, you know, could we be dropping someone below the line if they don't get 6 or whatever? And, you know, it was your approach to try and take a more liberal or approach to saying a band between 4 and up to 10? Was that the intent behind it?
Thanks for the question. Yes, that's the intent. A minimum of 4 to constitute a local working group, up to 10. The more the better, but 10 being the threshold. There may be some challenges in some specific geographic locations around achieving 4 or 6 or whatever the number.
That's what I was sort of thinking. That's the base of why I'm asking it, because if we make it too hard for some of these smaller areas, then we could see them without a working group.
Thanks, Councillor Bill, for your points. Councillor Trevor?
Mine's question's probably along the same vein as Councillor Bill. With the groups that are in action at the moment, say last year and the year before, what numbers have comprised those groups in different townships or areas? Has there been 4? Has there been 10, 6, 8, whatever? Have you got any sort of ish numbers?
Thank you,
of groups?
Councillor. Most groups would be sitting at the 6 to 8. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Trevor. Colleagues, are there any other questions, comments regarding? I'll just see if anyone else wants to ask one. Councillor James, you're right. So, Councillor Carroll, back to you. Did you want to move?
Thank you. I do want to move that, but I just want to make a comment. If you have 6, then your quorum is 4. So you're not asking that there be 6 all the time. You would have a quorum of 4. And if you've got an area, and we've just heard that the average is 6 at a meeting, they don't have meetings very often. I've been on those, for a long time, since 2000, and it's not difficult. And I think if you're going to have a good mix of people, after all, those people represent that community. They represent that community, and ideas should be put up through those people from that community. So I would like to move that we change the minimum to 6. Thank you.
Carol, I'm happy to follow that up on due process. Just before I do, I will go to the Mayor for a comment, noting that's not the whole motion, that's a separate motion. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Chair. Through you to Paul, to Kylie, on the attachment 3, page 7 of 8, talks about funding and engagements of products or for products and services. And sort of in line, I guess, with Councillor Carroll in regard to, engaging and empowering local committees. If there is an opportunity for a local working group to have a sponsor or have someone who's willing to donate goods or services that can help with the event, what's the process that they would go through for that? Would that be an engagement with Toowoomba Regional Council? It says there that members are not authorised to engage, procure products or services or confirm sponsorships in regard to council-sanctioned Australia Day events and activations. Is there an option for sponsors or others to provide goods in kind to local working groups as part of the event?
Thanks for the question. The short answer is a yes, but in accordance with council sponsorship policy. That's the key. It's got to be compliant with that policy position, which I don't have the detail in front of me, unfortunately. But short answer is yes, but it's got to be compliant with that process.
So I think potentially, Chair, if I could just go through you, it may be worth our while thinking about that, what additional wording you could put in there to safeguard a process. Because what we do want is a community to be engaged and a local working group to be empowered to actually, make decisions and be able to do that. So if they have a clear path of action, if they're approached by someone or if they seek support from someone to provide goods and services in kind or maybe a monetary donation, then we do actually have a process by which that can happen. And just clearly put that out in that part of the local working group information. Don't have to finalise the wording, but if you consider that to what it could be, and include it next week when it comes to us, that would be good.
Thanks, Mayor. You didn't need a response from Kylie on that one?
My response has been...
Yeah, we will seek to make that amendment before the ordinary meeting, Councillor, and include that.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, are there any other questions on this item generally? Councillor O'Shea.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's probably sort of been touched on, but I just want to be really clear and understand this. If we change this terms of reference from 4 to 6, and as Councillor Bill and Trevor have sort of raised, and I know the intent of it, of course, is, and that's always been the intent, to have as many people involved in this as we can in the activation, and we see some communities are more active than others, and etc. And hoping that obviously encourages that to continue. If you have a very strong, smaller working group that only ends up with, let's just, for argument's sake, say 5, if our terms of reference is 6, what happens? Does that mean that it's null and void, or? Because that's what we're trying to, we've got to think about the implications potentially, because I agree, it's a lot better to have 6, and the numbers that we want to have is, I completely understand that and completely concur with it. But I think we also need to think about, on the other side of it, because if this is our terms of reference and we've got a local working group and they have 4, what does that mean effectively? That it doesn't meet our. All I'm getting is, I can see if there's a group that has 4 and it's a really strong 4, and we say, look, there's a really good opportunity here for them to have an Australia Day, an event. We're going to come back here and we're going to rescind this, or we're going to change the policy we're going to bend our policy to allow it in that situation. So as I said, I completely have no qualms and agree with around having 6, but I just think we need to understand the implications of that, because I know that's the opposite of the intent of what we're trying to achieve.
I might just get the General Manager to respond. Thanks, Councillor O'Shea.
Thanks, Councillor O'Shea. Good morning, councillors. I think we would make every effort that we possibly could through marketing and direct engagement to make sure we get to that minimum of 6. I think you questioned, though, if council endorses terms of reference that says a minimum of 6, and if we were unable to achieve that minimum of 6, if we only had 5, we wouldn't be consistent with the terms of reference endorsed by council, and we would, if we had a local working group that only had 5, I'd suggest we'd need to come back to you with a separate report that says, in this particular instance, we haven't been able to achieve the 6, and seek endorsement to change that for the particular local working group for that particular period. And I'm not sure of what happens on the ground. We've heard from Kylie that generally we've got 6 to 8, so it doesn't sound like there's that much challenge in getting the 6, and we would make absolutely every effort to market and tap people on the shoulder and encourage those people who do put their names forward. Have you got a friend that you can bring along to get to the 6? I'm not sure if there is a risk there. I'm not sure how big that risk is. It sounds to me as though it's pretty low that we wouldn't get to 6.
Thanks, Councillor O'Shea. Councillor Shine.
Yeah, no, I just wondering why what has happened in the past to promote to encourage Councillor Taylor to ask for this increase. Is it the case that there has been some exclusion of representatives from other areas in the past, and how you overcome that, I'm not too sure. But perhaps you might be able to answer that.
Whether it were intentional or not, through you, Mr. Chair, to answer that question is yes, there has been.
Thanks, Councillor Carroll. Does that answer your question, Councillor Shine? Or?
Well, I'm not too sure whether 4 to 6 will stop that problem. And is there some other way of having wider representation? It's a bit hard to define it, I would have thought.
I can ask an officer to... Nick, did you want to attempt to answer that?
I'm just asking some questions of the team here, and I'm looking at the track changes version of the document myself. I think we were silent on the minimum number in the past. We haven't specified it, so we're just trying to provide some clarity this time around. 4 was the number chosen. We could have chosen 5 or 6, I guess, and put it forward to you. And we've suggested 4. Councillor Taylor suggested 6 for what sounds like very good reason to me. And in conferring with the team, they've confirmed for me that they think that there's low risk that we wouldn't achieve 6. They think that that's a relatively low risk. Having that minimum of 6 provides the extra diversity, like Councillor Taylor is suggesting and arguing. I think we're relatively comfortable with that as a number. We don't see that as being a major risk.
And you think that increasing the number would increase the opportunity for other geographical areas to be included, simply because it's a higher number.
To answer your question, Councillor Shine, the marketing activities that occur around attracting members is broad. It's usually through local media and the like, and through networks with the community development officers, etc. So there are opportunities always been there. That being said, I do think moving forward there are some opportunities to us look specifically at geographic dispersion as opposed to just the number of nominees that reply to effectively an EOI or an advertising process, just to ensure that we are getting breadth of geographic dispersion.
So some more intensive inquiry in the areas that haven't been represented before.
Thank you, Councillor Shine. Councillor Bill, you had a question.
So, sort of. I just wonder if we, shouldn't policy, and this is a question to any of you, I mean to all of us, I guess, shouldn't policy facilitate rather than encumber? Because if we find ourselves as Councillor James coming back to the boardroom to try and correct things over, and shouldn't policy cater to the majority and not the 3% majority that want to give us the 80% of the grief? I don't know. It's an open-ended question.
It's a question, and I'll ask the GM to answer.
So I hear the reasoning for 6, but a quorum of 4 is not a reason to have 6 either. A quorum is different to a mandatory 6 if you don't get 6 members. So
colleagues, I'll allow questions on this. I don't sort of want to go into debate on the 4 and 6 just yet. But Nick, the question from Councillor Bill, did you have any response?
Proposing a potential solution to you, councillors, you may or may not like it, I'll propose it to you. We're already going to make some amendments to the terms of reference following the question from the Mayor before next week's meeting, and I would suggest that we would update the terms of reference here too, depending on the number that you're comfortable on deciding on, if it's 6. One thing that we could do to try and avoid the administrative burden if we're unable to achieve 6 is we could put the minimum of 6, maximum of 10, and we could add to that clause there, if following council's best endeavours, they're unable to achieve that minimum of 6, the CEO is delegated to approve an alternate number or a lesser number or something like that. That's up, that's then embedded in policy. It's 6, we use our best endeavours to get to 6. If we don't, to save the administrative burden, the CEO is authorised or delegated authority to approve a smaller number if that happens.
Nick, for your leadership on that. So, colleagues, I was getting a fair few nods around the table from that. Can I just have a look at the motion is on the screen? That one, we endorse the updated Australia Day coordinating group and local working group attachments 1 and 3, and resolve to vacate all current local working groups membership and conduct a fresh nomination process to appoint members. So we're dissolving them all to start again. Now, Councillor Carroll, I'm back to you. You have proposed an amendment to the motion. Nick's said that he can do it via updating it before it comes back to next Tuesday. I'll go with you. Would you still like to propose an amendment?
Yes, I would. And through you, Mr. Chair, and our team has mentioned something that is really important to this and where we really should be trying to go. If you've got and we have 2 much loved CLOs down there in Amy and Emma, the CLO probably is the key here in trying to attract people from different geographical areas of that particular district for the local Australia Day committee. So I do know the difference between a quorum and the number of members. What I'm saying is they don't meet that very often. And the fact is that sometimes with farmers and people like that, you just cannot get the total membership there on the actual day that they're meeting. So, and they do a bit by emails. So it is often not the fact that they have to be present with
Carroll,
digital that we have now.
I don't want to go to the debate just yet. I just want to get the motion exactly as
I just want to change. I'm happy to add what Nick has proposed. I'm happy to support that because I think I don't think there'll be any effort needed to get 6, but if it should it be, that's the backup. So I'm happy for that to happen.
So, colleagues, We will have a look, and this is an amendment to become part of the motion, as the mover has asked for. So there'll be part 3, and I do have to get that in full before it is put. So change the local working group membership to contain a minimum of 4 to 6 members. Did you want to add, Nick, your comments about delegate to the CEO when this can't be met, or you're happy with number 3?
I think what we would do is this afternoon we will go and make these changes to the terms of reference, and next week when it's attached to the ordinary meeting agenda, it will be updated to reflect the conversation and requests here today. So next week when you update it, they will be amended to reflect your feedback.
Thanks, Nick. So we still need to go through the amendment? Well, Councillor Carroll has asked that we go through the amendment.
I actually don't think that that's necessary, because we would have the terms of reference updated for you next week, and we'll circulate that and make it abundantly clear for you to be able to do that. Perhaps it's back in recommendation 1, endorse the updated Australia Day Coordinating Working Group terms of reference and Australia Day Local Working Group terms of reference in consideration of the feedback provided, and then resolve to vacate, and then we would update that. I'll circulate it via email for you all to see it, highlight the changes, and you would be able to endorse that next week.
Thanks, Nick.
Mr. Chair,
so,
if I
Councillor
might-
Carroll, I'm with you. You've got an amendment on the
It
books.
is not an amendment. This is committee. It's not an amendment.
No, it is an amendment. But
Thank
did you,
No, it's
number
not.
1 is that it's updated as per the ordinary meeting. Would you be happy with that, or you still want it to
No,
go
I'm
with the
happy with
amendment?
that. I said straight up that it's not an amendment. This is committee, so it's just coming to us for the first time, and I'm very happy with that, and I thank Nick and the team for that. Thank you.
Thanks for that. So I think we can take out number 3 there, and that goes to the endorse the updated. And next week in the ordinary meeting, when we endorse again the updated, there may be some further updates to that. Colleagues, I'm happy with that. So, colleagues, the motion is as follows. Endorse the updated Australia Day Coordinating Working Group Terms of Reference, Attachment 1, and Australia Day Local Working Group Terms of Reference, Attachment 3, to incorporate feedback provided at the committee meeting, and number 2, resolve to vacate all current working groups as I read out before. Do I have a mover of the motion? Councillor Carroll has moved. Councillor Bill has seconded. Colleague, is there any need to go into debate? With no debate forthcoming, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is passed without dissent. Thank you for your work on that, colleagues. With item 3 being done, I will now conclude the meeting at 10:20. Thank you all for your work and attendance in going through that. With the meeting now concluded, could I
I'd like to welcome to the Corporate Service Committee meeting of Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I would like to thank those of you who are in the room with us today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council's social media channels. Remind councillors to click join meeting in Broadview on their open the meeting. Attendance including apologies, leave of absence and declarations of conflicts of interest. Apology, Councillor Rebecca Vonov. Motion that the mover and a seconder, Carol, that the apology of non-intent for Councillor Rebecca to be accepted. Noting vote. Anonymous. Note leave of absence, Councillor Edwina Barkway, no resolution required. Councillor Melissa Taylor, no resolution required. I have nil declarations prescribed conflicts of interest or declarable. The proposed motion for 2025 local Government Association Queensland. I'll now hand over to Anne-Marie.
Good morning, councillors. We've just got one motion in the report today, and I'm happy to hand over to Bailey if you've got any questions or queries in relation to this one.
Okay. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Chair and councillors. So the report is in relation to motions that Toowoomba Regional Council wants to submit for the LGAQ annual conference. They need to be approved by council. So I'll table the report and I take it as read and take questions from here.
Have any questions? Kerry?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Anne-Marie and Bailey. Just wondering, is there a time limit for these motions to be put up? In other words, is today the last day type of thing, or can we at the next future opportunity add to the list?
So there is a motion. My recollection is the 28th of July that they must be in by, but any motions need to be approved by council, unless you've got like a resolution that says that that it can be prepared by management, submitted and approved by the mayor. Like if you've got more motions, obviously time is the essence. But essentially, we would like to have, if there are any other motions that you would like considered or prepared, we'd want to prepare them for next week's meeting so you can consider them and approve them at the ordinary meeting. So the drop dead date is 28th of July, but the back date is that we've got to get it approved by council because it's your motions to be submitted.
Just if I might, bearing on what you've said and taking into account that quite a few councillors are absent, there may well be other motions that, and perhaps the suggestion that you've made that it be proceeded with via the mayor might be the way to. My colleagues might think that that's the way to go.
Councillor, Mayor.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Shine, for the suggestion, and Bailey for your words. I think next Tuesday is the time. The ordinary meeting of council next Tuesday. Councillors, we've had discussions about this on a couple of occasions now, and therefore next Tuesday will be the time frame to do that. I think they'll be back next week, irrespective if they're back or not. They've had due notification to have it in by next Tuesday, and that's the time to do it. Otherwise, the other alternative would be to have a special meeting of council to endorse it, which is what I would encourage if that was to happen, rather than the mayor have delegation.
Yes, councillors, just following on from that, I'm happy to get some communication out this afternoon with the template. And if there are any suggestions or anything that councillors may wish us to pursue to work on that over the next couple of days.
Any more questions? Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I'm happy to move the motion, and we'll happy to comment on if there's a seconder.
Carol Taylor. So we will now vote on the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? The motion is carried.
Councillors, welcome to the Economic Development Committee for July. Noting that Councillor Edwina was listed as the chair of this, as advertised in the council decision. Given that there are no items in the Economic Development Committee, I propose that I simply open and close the meeting for today. Is there any objections to that? And therefore the Economic Development Committee, I'll open the meeting and record the apology from Councillor Rebecca Von Hoff and need a motion moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Trevor. Those in favour? Motion's carried. We have a leave of absence from Councillor Edwina and Councillor Melissa, which has been noted. Being there no further items on today's Economic Development Committee, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.